When you pull a credit card from your wallet, you hold hardware born directly from Soviet espionage and CIA counter-surveillance operations. Tapping that piece of plastic at a checkout counter initiates a complex cryptographic defense sequence built to withstand attacks from coordinated criminal networks. In the exact millisecond between tapping the reader and hearing the approved beep, your card engages and defeats digital thieves attempting to intercept the signal. As physical cash disappears from circulation, criminals face a logistical problem. How do you rob a vault when the money exists entirely as digital code? To protect that code, global finance and organized crime are locked in an invisible arms race, and the front line of that war is sitting right in your pocket. This arms race started with the magnetic stripe. In the 1960s, an IBM engineer was trying to create a secure ID badge for the CIA. He succeeded by taking a strip of magnetized tape and melting it onto a plastic card using his wife's clothing iron. That strip stores data using microscopic iron particles. The particles are magnetically arranged into tiny coils called solenoids, encoding your account details into physical patterns on the back of the card. The fatal flaw of this design is that the magnetic pattern never changes. Anyone with a cheap card reader can perfectly and infinitely duplicate that exact physical arrangement of iron particles, a vulnerability that led to a massive wave of card skimming fraud. To stop skimming, Europay, MasterCard, and Visa formed an alliance to create the EMV standard. They replaced static magnetic tape with an embedded microchip designed to mount a dynamic defense. Instead of transmitting the exact same account number every time, the EMV chip acts as a miniature computer. Because the chip generates a completely new cryptogram for every single purchase, any intercepted data expires immediately. It generates a unique, one-time authentication code. The network violently rejects that exact same code if a thief tries using it a second time. Security protocols, however, are constantly tested. Researchers at Cambridge University discovered an exploitable flaw in how these chips communicate. They executed a man-in-the-middle attack. By placing themselves between the chip and the payment terminal, they intercepted the transaction and tricked the reader into accepting a completely fake PIN verification. To do this, they built a specialized hardware interceptor called the Smart Card Detective. This small circuit board sits directly between the victim's card and the merchant's terminal, filtering and altering the data flowing between them. To close communication gaps like this and speed up checkout lines, the financial industry moved toward contactless payments, relying on radio frequency identification, or RFID. RFID technology traces its roots straight back to the Cold War. In 1945, Soviet engineers built The Thing, a battery-free listening bug hidden inside a wooden seal gifted to the U.S. ambassador. It worked by harvesting power from incoming radio waves. Modern contactless cards use a specific form of this called near-field communication, or NFC. When you hold your card near a terminal, the reader emits a magnetic field. This field induces an electrical current within a tiny wire antenna coiled inside the plastic, waking up the card's chip without the need for a battery. Every time you tap to pay, you are relying on espionage physics. The card harvests power out of thin air, transmits a secure signal, and powers down the moment it leaves the magnetic field. Because physical chips are incredibly difficult to clone in the real world, thieves adapted. They shifted their focus to the internet, targeting e-commerce with card-not-present fraud. In an online checkout, the payment gateway cannot physically verify the microchip. Instead, it relies on the static 3-digit CVV printed on the back of the card. If a criminal copies those 3 numbers, they gain total access to the account online. The industry's countermeasure is the Dynamic CVV. Instead of printing a permanent number on the plastic, the 3-digit code changes at regular intervals. To make this work in a physical card, manufacturers embed a microscopic battery and a digital display directly into the plastic. This internal power source keeps a tiny clock running for 3 to 5 years, generating new codes on a set schedule. If a hacker steals a dynamic CVV from a website database, that code will expire in as little as 20 minutes. By the time they attempt to use the stolen data on another site, the card has already generated a new, valid code, neutralizing the theft. Building tiny batteries into plastic cards is expensive, costing up to $15 per unit. To reduce costs, banks are now removing the screen from the card entirely and embedding the changing CVV code directly into their mobile banking apps. From melted magnetic tape to battery-free microchips and dynamic codes, the piece of plastic in your wallet remains a living piece of military-grade spycraft. As long as there is value to protect, the invisible arms race will continue to evolve.